Hello everyone. So in this video we're talking about how to implement the Google sign up button on Xcode. I've seen that most people usually implement Google sign up button on JavaScript, but I've hardly seen for Xcode. So that's why I'm making this video. So this video focuses mostly on Back4App and parseSwift. So it doesn't matter whatever backend you're using. Maybe you are using Firebase. I see a lot of people use Firebase. But if you're not using Back4App and parseSwift, it's fine. Just continue the video. You can learn a lot from this video. I would break this video down for you to understand. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how this works. So you click on the Google sign up button. You see it wants you to sign in with Google. So when you sign in, let me sign in as Nuggets. So you see that we are getting the full name Nuggets from Google. So this is actually telling us that we successfully logged in. And let me do it again for the next account so it doesn't look like I'm hard coding it. So you see that the full name has been pulled from Google and it says that person signed in successfully. Okay. So to do this, the first thing is this was the resource. So this was the resource that I actually followed, which helped me implement this Google sign up button. But at some point, the code here was old, but it gave me an idea on how to create it. I'll put the link of this website in the description below. The first thing you will do, you will go to step 1, and what you can do, you go to Google Cloud console. Okay, you go to that link there. So it's going to take you to Google Cloud console and you have to sign in. If you've not signed in or if you don't have an account, you have to create an account. Okay, so once you create the account, all you have to do next is you go to the top here, you click on the top here, you click on new project. So once you click on new project, you write the name of your project, whatever name you want to give it, then hit create. So now on this drop down arrow that is here, I will just click on this. Okay, now I've selected the project that I just created. The next thing you have to do is this. So you go straight down to APIs and services. So you go to OAuth consent screen first. When you go here, you will now go to external, then you hit create. So what we are doing here, we are actually creating an app that gives us access to the Google API, which works with the Google sign up button. So I will just give it any name. Then the support email, I'll just choose any support email from the drop down. Then app logo, anything app logo, skip it. Okay, skip all of this. Skip all of these, then hit save and continue. Okay, it says email. So all you have to do, it says developer contact email. You put your email here. So once you do that, you now click save and continue. Okay. So what you will now do now, you just scroll down, just hit save and continue again. Hit save and continue again. You don't need to add test users, just hit save and continue. Then you scroll down again, then say go back to dashboard. Okay. So what most people don't usually do, they don't usually click this publish app. So if you just click publish app and you see, just click confirm. It tells you verification not required, and you see publishing status is in production. So this means that anybody who has a Google email can now log in your app using your API link. Okay, so that is the meaning of this. So if you left it back at testing, the amount of people who can log in are skewed, not much people. But now that is in production, you can accept anybody who has a Google account can sign in, so that is good. So the next thing you go to credentials. Okay, you will now go to what? You go to credentials, then you go to create credentials. Okay, Then what you will do, you will say OAuth client ID. So in OAuth client ID, you're going to select the type of application. So since we're dealing with iOS, we select iOS. If you're dealing with Android, you select Android. But for this tutorial, we're doing iOS, okay, Xcode. So we're doing iOS, so the iOS clients, okay, I'll just say YouTube. So this says the bundle identifier as in your app's info.file. So this is very, very important. So what this means is this. In your Xcode project, you have to get the bundle ID, okay? You have to get the bundle ID of your Xcode project. So you will go into the Xcode app that you're creating. Here I have a dummy Xcode app right here. You go to this top here. This blue thing that is right here, you go here. You click on targets. You click on the target builds here, one of them. Go to sign in and capabilities. Okay. Then you see the bundle identifier here. You can copy it. Then I'll go back here. I will just paste it here. Then what you just do, you just click create. So you click OK. If you click on this URL, this link right here. So you see what we have a client ID. We have the iOS URL schemes. So these two, we're going to be using them in our Xcode project. Okay. So now we're going to go back here. Okay. So before you continue, make sure you have parse working in your Xcode already. If you don't have it, you have to follow this tutorial. So this tutorial will show you how to set up parse in your Xcode. Okay. So parse is actually what is going to be working with the database and back for app. Okay. So it's going to be working with database and back for app. So if you've done this, you follow along. So now the next thing we're going to do, setting up SDK, Google SDK. So what you have to do, you will copy this URL here. You copy it there. Then you go into your project. So you go into your project, you go into the first folder, you go into projects right here, okay? You go into this project right here, then go to package dependencies, okay? When you go to package dependencies, then all you have to do, you click the plus icon, okay? But you paste that URL that you have to copy, you paste it here, then you click add package. So that is where you're going to add a package, and you will see all these things you're seeing to the left here. Okay, just like mine here. So now the next thing you're going to do, go back to our credentials page, which is here. You click on this link here. You will copy the URL scheme. Okay, when you copy the URL scheme, all you have to do, you will go into your app. So you go to the first folder, then you click on targets, okay? Then you make sure that you click on info, okay? When you click on info, then you see URL types. So when you hit URL types, you have a drop down menu here, okay? For here, you see that I have one here. In yours, you won't have any. All you have to do, you click on the plus icon here. When you click on the plus icon here, you just paste the thing you copied here. That's all you have to do, okay? The next thing you have to do, you go into your info. So when you get here, what you have to do, you will click on the URL types. Then you go into item 0. Okay, you go to URL schemes, yeah. You go there. Then you see here where it says item 0. Then all you have to do, you change whatever is here. What you change it to, you are going to go back to that website. You copy this iOS URL scheme. So the same thing we copied before. You'll paste that here, okay? So once you're done, just close the URL types. Then what you have to do, you click the add button, okay? So when you click the add button, what you will now do, You are now going to type this. You see this GID client ID? You type that in there. Then you will put the value there for that. Okay. So I mean, when you click the plus icon here, you type GID client ID. I can't spell it. Then once you type it in, you will now put the value here. Okay. So the value of the client ID, you will get that from, so you will get the client ID from here. You see this part here? You just copy that. Copy everything here, come here and paste it here. That's back. That's all. Okay. So this is actually when we start using the Google sign-in with parseSwift. So I have my login view controller here. I'm just going to explain the code, what is going on and everything, and kind of go back to what we set up. Okay. So we have the imports UI kits. That is not important. You have to import what the Google sign-in. Okay. So now, so this unclick Google button, so it links to the Google button that you see on the screen. So if you click here, so I just link this Google button to this function. That's all I did here. Okay. And once I click this button, it calls handle sign in with Google. You understand? Once I click that button, it just calls this function here. So that is all that is there. Okay. So here, so the first thing here, this whole chunk of code, what it's saying is this. The first step to actually handle signing with Google is to configure our client ID with our Google SDK we downloaded. Remember, we downloaded our package manager here. We downloaded Google SDK here, all these things here. So we have to tell it what client ID we are using, okay, for our Google sign in. So if you remember here, you have a client ID here. And remember, we put it in our app already. If you remembered, okay, we put that information here. Google GID client ID. That is Google ID client ID. That is the meaning of this, okay? So we put it here. So what I'm saying here is this. We don't have to do this because we've already placed it here in info. We've placed it here already. We've placed in the client ID. So the way Google SDK works is once you run your project, Google SDK is going to look through here and get the Google client ID. So we don't have to explicitly set our client ID here. Okay. You see where I said configuring Google signing SDK with client ID. Then you have the sign-in config, then you're configuring the client ID for the Google SDK. You don't have to do it, okay? So we can just skip that. So the next thing we're gonna do here, is this. So here, what we're trying to do here is to get the root view controller. So what I mean by root view controller is this. Your navigation controller, okay? We're trying to get the navigation controller because with the navigation controller, if you have the navigation controller, it helps Google know how to place the window. If we have larger screens, that's all we're doing here. So we're trying to get the root view controller. So you see where it says, okay, let's scene, window scene, UI application dot shared content screen, connected screen dot first. So it's saying, okay, how many scenes do you have here? We have only just one scene here. And I'm telling you to get the first scene, which is this whole scene that is going on here. Okay. You see where it says dot first, right? So we're getting the first scene, then as UI window scene. Then it's saying out of those scene, what windows do you want to get? I want to get the first window, okay, which is this sign in window right here. This is just a navigation controller, while this is a window, okay? So after doing that, then we're telling it that, hey, whatever window we have, what is the root view controller, which is the navigation controller. Okay, so this gives us access to the navigation controller here. Okay, so we are going to check if we have all these informations. Okay, if we can get all this information, else we'll say there is no root view controller. Okay, remember the goal for all this is to get the root view controller. Then the next thing we're going to do, since our application, if you can see the way I ran it, we don't have a logout button. So we're just logging in and logging in. So anytime we want to log in, we want to remove or log out any current logged in user. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. Okay, so you see, if I run this app, there's no place to log out right here. So what we are doing here is to manually, once we logging in, log out any current logged in user. Okay, that's why we need this. So here, this is the main thing we're gonna do. So GID sign in. Where we get this GID is from the Google sign in right here. That's where we get that function. So GID sign in dot shared instance, okay, dot sign in. Then we're gonna pass in the what? Navigation controller. Okay, we pass it in here. So all this is saying is this: once this is finished running, call this everything in here, everything down here. You know, that's what it's saying. Okay, so what is happening here is this: if I right click and I click on show quick help, you will notice what is returning. It's returning a GID sign in results. Okay, and it's returning an error. So if you notice here, we have a variable called authentication here. That value actually maps to this Google sign-in results. Okay, and this error is actually like a variable that holds this error. That's what we're doing. You can give it a different name, it doesn't matter, but this error has to be error. Okay, so after this whole thing runs and we return this and this, so what is actually returning, like I showed previously, it's returning a GID sign-in result and an error. So the variable that holds the GID result is just authentication here. Okay, the error, this is the variable that holds the error. Okay, so we're checking if there's an error, show this message. That's all this is saying right here. Okay, and we're going to return. This will stop everything. Okay, and else we have a guard here. We are saying, hey, we are going to go into this variable here, which has what? This Google, you see this Google GID sign-in results. Okay, that's actually what we have. We are getting the result from the Google sign-in. Okay, so from the result, we are getting the user, and we are setting it to a variable called Google user right here. So the user ID, we're just saying, hey, Google user.user ID. So whatever the user ID is in Google, we're just getting the user ID and we're storing it here. ID token is still stored here. Okay, we're going to use the ID token for logging in. Okay, and if there is some issue here, any issue that's going on here, we just say, hey, ID token is missing. Okay, which should never ever happen, and we're just going to hit return, if there's an error, but else we save all this variable here. So here now, this is where the difference comes in. So if you are using like Firebase or some other application, you have to find a way to actually log in the user, using your platform. But whatever platform you're using, understand this: Google has already given you the user object. Whatever user object that you got back from Google, you have all the details. You have their full name, you have their email, you have their user ID. That's all you need. Let me show you how to get it. So you see how we got the user, Google user here. Let's say I want to get the full name of the Google user, right? I'll just say Google user dot. So remember, the Google user is actually this that I made here. I got it from authentication.user, and the authentication is from here, which is the return value from this function that finished running. Okay, so I'll say Google user dot what? I'll click on profile, then I'll now say dot. You see, you can get the email, and you see that is the Google's user email. I can get the name, which is the Google user's full name. I can get the family name. I'm telling you, so it goes deep. So you can check if the Google user has an image. I can even get the image URL that is stored in Google. So if a user stores an image in Google, you can pull it by saying profile dot what image. Okay, image URL. Do you see that? You just get the image URL. You see, it's get the user profile image URL. Okay, so that is just it. So you have all the information, so you can actually find a way to store it in the database as you want to. So it doesn't matter whatever, if you're using Firebase or anything, you just have to find out how can you now log in the user using Firebase or using any platform that you're using. Okay, so for those who are using parseSwift and Back4App, parseSwift actually gives us a nice way to log in. So you see, all you have to do, you click on, you type user.google.login. Okay, all you have to do, you pass in the user ID. Remember, we got the user ID from here. Okay, which is a Google's user ID. That's actually the user from Google. Okay, the ID of the user from Google, we pass it in here. The ID token, we pass it in there too. Okay, do you see it? This is the ID token here. ID token dot token string. Okay, which actually turns the ID to a string. Because if you pass in just the ID token like that, it's going to give you an error. It actually gives you an error because it says it expects it expects a string. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to do dot token string. So here, just like we did here before, notice this function, notice we have an opening brackets here. So what this is saying is this: run this login function. Once the login function is complete, right, return the results here. Return the result and run this code. Okay, so the result goes to this result variable here. To see what this login function is returning, you will click here, you double click, then you go to show quick help. Okay, so you see that what it's returning after completion, right, is returning what? A result. And this result has what? A user and a parse error. So you see it's returning just one object, which is called result. Okay, so you see this return, whatever we return here, I'm passing that return, the value that we return, I'm storing it into this result variable. Okay, so what we are now checking, we're checking, hey, if success. So if success, and we put let's user. So remember, we are actually getting a user from this result. Okay, so if I go to code help, you see we are getting a user. Okay, user right here. Okay, so it says let user is equal to this. So if it's successful, what we are going to do here is this. Let me put a space between this. First of all, I will get back the user. Remember, the login gets the user that you're logging in, that just logged in. Okay, looking at this again, you see it's returning a user. Okay, we get the user that just logged in. Okay, right here, we pass in the user right here. Okay, that's what we're doing. So there is a function right here. It says fill in missing user data. So the way parseSwift logs in users, they don't actually log in the user correctly. They don't fill in the informations into your database correctly. Meaning that the user ID, not even the user ID, it won't fill in the first name, it won't fill in the full name and the email address of the logged in user, which is important. So what this fill in missing data is doing, it's filling in the data for us. So if we go to this function here, you see it right here. It's called fill in missing user data. Okay. So fill in missing user data. So what it's doing, it's taking a Google ID Google user. Okay, GID Google user, and it's taking in the regular user. So this Google ID user, remember, if you remember our Google user, right here. Okay, so this Google user is of type, you see it right here, is of type what? GID Google user. Okay, and if you see it right here, it's the same thing as here, GID Google user. So that's going to be the parameter for this function. You take in a Google user, then you will take in a regular user. Okay, so regular user is just a regular user. So yeah, so regular user is the user we get from here. Okay, once parseSwift has logged in the user, it's going to create a regular user in our database. Okay, so we are going to get that regular user, pass it into the regular user section here. The Google user, we're going to get it from here, which is this Google user right here. Okay, we'll pass it in here. Once we're done passing those tools in there, so we're going to store in the regular user, and we change it to a var because we want to change the variables. We want to change up the value stored in there. So now the next thing we're going to do, we say user dot full name. We're going to check if it's null, because like I said before, parseSwift doesn't add the full name. It doesn't parse in the full name and the email from the Google user. It never does it. So what we have to do, we have to add it manually. Okay, so we're checking if it's null. So if this full name, if the regular user doesn't have a full name, it means that parseSwift didn't parse everything correctly. So we have to add in the user. Okay, so add in the full name. So say Google, you say user the full name is going to be equals to Google user the profile name. Okay, then you say user the email, you just say Google user the profile the email. Okay, you store those information there. Then you're going to what? Save the user into the database. Okay, which is parseSwift. Okay, you save the user using parseSwift. So you say user the save, then you save the user. Okay, so that's all this function that is here. Okay, we fill in the user in here. So when we fill in the missing information, then we just print success. So that is actually it here. We just print success, else we say failed. Okay, that's just all that is going on here. So there's nothing complicated. I know it's a lot going on, but that's why I try to break it down and explain it as little by little so you can understand it. Okay, so that is actually the most thing that is happening here. Okay, that's what does the Google login, So the main thing is to find a way to configure, which I actually showed you, configure the Google SDK with your project, okay, with your Google client ID. Once you do that, next thing you have to do, you have to implement handle sign in with Google, okay, which we did here. So remember, the only step that is always different from everyone is how to now log in the Google user. Okay, remember, when Google logs in, when Google verifies that the user is good to go, so like when the user clicks the Google button and signs in, right? That is Google sign in. After signing in the Google, that is the same for everyone. Okay, signing in the user using Google is good for everyone. But now you have to now sign in the Google user into your app too. So that's the point that is always different. Okay, I understand that you have the Google users information. You have the full name, you have the family name, you have their photo, you have their email, So yes. So with that, you just have to find the logic to sign in a user with whatever backend you use. Okay. So this whole full code is actually on GitHub. I will put the link down below. But you see, it shows you how the project runs. So yes, so you can download this project and actually play around with it. But yes, so that's actually everything. Thank you for listening and have a good day.